The class tonight is a question and answer, which is my favorite meditation class, because I'm going into this like I have almost no idea what we're going to talk about tonight, which is great because I can't psych myself out for it. I do have 2 questions that have been relayed to me already, and if you guys have other questions, you can submit them online or you can raise your hand on Zoom and ask. As I always say, and as my Sifu used to say, probably still says, as far as I know, this is not the gospel. My answers are not written in stone anywhere. You should at best write them like in pencil, scrawl them into the back of a notebook or something, and this is what I've got for today, and it will change at some point in the future, maybe in the near future. So ask me the same exact question again in a couple of years, 10, 20 years, and you'll get a much better answer. And the answer tonight will be just fine. So I'm going to start off with my question from Catherine, and she says, "Hi Sifu, here's my question. The other night in class, as we were doing combinations, you made a positive comment about my technique, thank you, in ellipses, and my immediate thought was, that doesn't match my experience, in quotations, because I had a list almost a mile long of things to fix in that combination. How do I continue to improve my technique but also remain very present in the moment, having each instance of a combination be a precious experience?" Whew, that's a good question. So this is one of the ways that we deal with practicing mindfulness and really connecting to the moment in class is when we're throwing technique, your mind will still have a tendency to wander a little bit or get attached a little bit, right? So you're throwing your technique and you're like, that hook punch sucked. You just really whiffed it. Maybe your partner was holding a mitt and you just like barely hit it with your pinky knuckle, or you could just tell it wasn't a very powerful technique. And if I was walking by and I saw it, you thought to yourself, oh no, I can't believe Sifu just saw that one. Of course, of all the ones that I just threw, that's the one that he sees. And all of that thought is going on while we're moving on to the next counts, right? And so you're still stuck in the last one. And you experience this in some drills immediately, right? Because if your mind wanders or you get stuck in the past when you're sparring or grappling, someone's going to tap you, someone's going to hit you, lightly and responsibly, but you're going to know immediately if your mind was not where it was supposed to be in the moment. And she's relaying a pretty common experience that people ask me about sometimes, which is like I'm throwing my technique, and in this case, I complimented her. I think I said something like beautiful because she looked really good. And when she asked me this question earlier today, I said, well, yeah, I wasn't talking about you compared to how you could possibly be. I was talking about you compared to everyone else in the class that night, because everyone else did not quite look as good as Catherine, who's a red sash, who's really awesome. And yeah, I know she can do better, but I still felt like saying something nice in that moment, so I said it. So her mind goes, oh yeah, I know you're saying that, probably just to be nice, and my technique sucks, and this is all the stuff that I'm thinking about. So if you're having that experience, you'll notice also that you can't really throw your technique very quickly. You can't throw it with real power because you can't pour yourself into it. You're not really fully in that moment. You're stuck in the past, or you're thinking about the future, and none of that equals the most powerful kind of full expression of yourself or experience in that moment. So how do we continue to improve technique but remain present in the moment? What we want to do is kind of be able to switch in our minds between, like I say in class sometimes, between scientist and caveman mode. In a scientist mode, I'm thinking about how I can fix my techniques, and I'm going to work on those little details. And then caveman mode is I'm not thinking about anything at all. I'm just going, I'm feeling, and allowing it to kind of flow through me and just do everything that I can to create a powerful, momentary expression of that technique. Now, you have to switch between these two, and if you find yourself off balance in one direction, maybe you find yourself too often in scientist mode where you're just thinking. Your logical brain is too involved, and you're always identifying with that logical kind of process. You cannot do martial arts if you're always stuck there. You can learn martial arts and you can get better technique, but you cannot do martial arts in the same way that you can't spar or you can't meditate if your mind is attached to something and it's thinking through it. So what you must be able to do is then set that aside and then just go hard and throw your stuff. So what I think is a great idea to do is set it so that if you're doing a drill that's on the count, for example, you're doing Kihon and I count E and you punch, R and you punch. Say for yourself, today I'm going to work on a set number of techniques that I'm thinking about fixing, and then the rest of it I stop thinking about fixing it completely. I just throw it. So take like 5 counts. I'm going to fix it for the first 5, and then after the first 5, I'm going to let that go. I flip the switch in my brain, and I go into this just like mayhem. The body is going, and power is flowing through me. If your logical brain is in the way, it can't happen. So after you've set aside your first couple of counts, then just allow it to happen. And when you practice doing that over and over again, then it becomes a more natural state for your mind to be in class. Even if we're doing a drill that you might traditionally think of, like the purpose for this is for me to work on my technique and get better. Of course it is, but it is also the purpose of all of our drills, for you to be able to fully experience the moment and just throw that technique without worrying about fixing it. Other question? I'll go to Kaya. Go ahead.
Hello, sir. So my question is, and I have to preface this by saying I haven't been as consistent with my meditation practice. So when I do go to sit, I'll normally sit between 20 to 30 minutes, but then I'll have to stop because one of my legs will usually fall asleep. What's
your question? What do I do about that?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So far, I just heard a complaint. I didn't hear a question. All right. So I'm meditating, and I haven't been as consistent as I'd like to be, but I'm doing it. And I find that between 20 and 30 minutes, what? You have more to add to this? Go ahead. Hold on. You just got muted again. Unmute yourself again, Kaya.
Sorry. I got lost in that I forgot my question. My question was that if I'm actually more consistent with my practice, will I actually be able to build up to sit longer without my legs bothering me?
Got it, yes. You're speaking directly to what I was going to say as part of the answer to this. But let's say that this is a super common experience that people have is you're sitting and meditating, and first of all, a very common experience is I wish I were doing it more often and I wish I were doing it longer. But let's say that you're doing it no matter how often or how long, your body's going to hurt unless you're able to unplug the senses before your body starts to scream. You know, your knee starts to scream, and it's very difficult to unplug the senses then. It's not impossible, but very difficult. So Sifu Brown and Miss Donahue back in Michigan used to describe this as like a race, or no, Miss Donahue used to say, you gotta lock it down, and Sifu would describe it like, this is a race between your ability to get beyond the senses and your body's ability to distract you with itches and pains or whatever the body's going to throw at you. So that's going to happen. Make no mistake. It's normal, and you should not beat yourself up for it. And you can't give in to that and say, my knee hurts, so I'm going to stop meditating. Because guess what? You're now training your body to hurt. And you're not necessarily training your knee to be more damaged by allowing yourself to stop meditating, but you are training your mind to feel that and to kind of be waiting for it and looking for it rather than getting beyond the senses. So ideally, your knee hurts. It's not so bad that you know I can actually keep going here. You keep going. The pain will subside eventually. It might take a while, and it will certainly take longer than you want it to, but it can still happen, right? Now, if it is like an actual injury and you're making yourself worse by continuing to sit, then make an adjustment. Maybe you need to sit in a different position. Maybe you need to get up and move around and then come back, which is always the last option, but if you have to do that, okay, you do it. But I would suggest playing around with different sitting positions. So maybe you try sitting in a straight back chair rather than sitting seiza or lotus, full lotus. All of those positions have a tendency to be a little bit trickier on the knees and the hips. If you need to sit in a straight back chair, that's okay. It's better to do that and continue meditating than it is to sit in the position that you think is like, this is real, I'm really doing it, but then after a couple of minutes my knee hurts and I give up. So, different position. And the better that you get at meditating, the longer that you meditate, the more consistent you are. First of all, you're going to find a way around that, even in a sitting position that's not as comfortable. And you will kind of train your mind to actually ignore or be able to unplug the senses before that even happens. So there's no shortcut to this. If you sit down and your knee starts to hurt, some people will say, well, I guess I just can't meditate. My knee hurts too much when I do it. That's not you. I know that. Some people will say, my knee hurts, so I'm going to hold off on meditating until I really, strengthen my knee, or I'll just sit for as long as I can, and then I'll do some exercises and all that. Well, you should exercise your knee, and you should stretch and do the things that you need to do, including finding a different way to sit if necessary, without shortchanging your meditation. Keep going with that, because we are so brilliant. The human mind is truly masterful at coming up with excuses to not meditate, because meditation is so scary for the ego. So your ego will throw pain at you, it'll throw itches at you, it'll throw things at you that you just have to do right now. You can't sit now because maybe you left the stove on, I don't know, just stop meditating. All that stuff is just a distraction. Your monkey mind is trying to get in there and stop you from being able to transcend the ego, because it's so scary, because it's so confrontational. So be very weary of falling into that trap of, when something hurts, I get up and stop. Do all that other stuff. Find a better place to sit in, and then try to just sit through it if possible. Other question. I've got Meryl. Very excitedly with this question.
Hebrew, do you have any memory techniques for remembering names? Techniques? People's names and names of techniques.
This is a bizarre question for a meditation class, but I'll give you a quick answer. So first of all, now that you guys are all on Zoom, the technique that I have is I read the little name on the bottom corner of Zoom. It's made it very easy for me to memorize people's names. I'm honestly, in my day-to-day life, pretty horrible at memorizing names. I don't have a great technique for that situation. The only people whose names I remember are people who came into the dojo and actually signed up for classes and became students. Because my brain only has enough capacity for few very important people in my life. If I meet somebody socially, the next time that I see them, I have no idea who they are. I'm always like, I'm gonna, did we meet before? I feel, you look so familiar. That's my technique, is I always pretend like I've met this person before. And it's not necessarily the best thing to do. Just say, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, I forgot your name. Can you remind me? Now that's rough, because one of the most important things that you can give somebody is your attention. And of course, remembering their name is going to feel really good for somebody. So that would be nice. And I'm working on it outside of the dojo. I'll remember all of your names. Even if I don't see you on Zoom, I'll still remember who you are. It's everybody else that doesn't really get that. So I don't know, Meryl, Google it. Find something else. But at the end of the day, if you have the right intention, people are not going to be pissed off for you not remembering their name. Mac has one. Go ahead.
Yeah, sir. My question is, I've heard you talk a lot about how, planning is okay, and if you're not planning, then you're not going to accomplish very much or do very much in life. But what I'm struggling with is a little bit more around ambition as opposed to planning, and I'm curious that like I consider myself an ambitious person, and I wonder if that somehow is like not just accepting the present moment, or I feel like I'm often living in the future because I so much want to accomplish so many things that like I'll plan and then I'll show up and execute for the things that I planned for. But I don't know if like the wanting for accomplishment or just desire to like live the most it is somehow like forsaking the moment.
Yeah, what's your ambition? Are we talking about ambition like in like a career sense, or in, because let's be clear, you could actually be very ambitious in trying to be present in the moment, which would work really well for you being present in the moment. And I assume that's not what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think I do it with career, but I do it with, I'll literally like list out the areas of my life. I'll be like, okay, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, emotional, career, and then I'll like think about like what I want that to be years and years and years from now, and then I'll like list out like how to do those things. But I feel like I worry that I do it so much that I'm not giving the present moment what it deserves.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so first of all, that's all brilliant. If you have different, most people only do this with career and money. They're like, someday I'm going to have this much money, and then everything's going to be all right. But if you're applying this kind of ambition to the other areas in your life, and these are things that are important to you, right? More important than money, I'm going to assume. Like a lot of people, they understand money is a means to an end. But these other things that we strive for, the ability to be better in a relationship, the ability to be happier, the ability to just be healthy, all of these things are their own end. And we should strive, and we should have ambition, and we should plan. And those are slightly different things, right? But you also recognize, and I'm sure that you know all about this, the cycle of desire. If you get caught up in this hedonic treadmill where you're always, thinking about what's next and what's better, and you're never actually appreciating fully what you have in the moment, then you're never going to be living life. You're always going to be thinking about what's next, and it's impossible to be happy, and it's impossible to actually live and experience life that way. So what you're talking about is balance, and you mentioned this in your question. It's like, I feel like I do that too much. So what is too much? It's kind of going back to the first answer to Catherine's question. It's like, I want to be able to set aside time where I'm doing that. I want to set aside time where I am planning for, where I am kind of allowing myself to think about what I want for myself in the future, and what my highest self is like and would be doing, and how do I get there, and be specific and real with yourself with that. If you're setting aside this time, say it's an hour, I spend that time completely focused and living in that space of what is the best that I can become, and then set it aside, because if you do that all day long, or you're just always allowing your mind to go back to that, then you're right, you are kind of hampering your ability to be in the moment. So, how much time you're spending, if you feel like it's too much, the answer to your question is very simple, just do it less. and I think that it's important to set aside time. Most of the people listening to this, by the way, are like, oh, I never spend time thinking about like the kind of person that I want to be, or how I can be healthier. It's just like I get up, and life happens to me, and I'm constantly just like putting out fires, and at the end of the day, I'm lucky if I can sleep. So they're like, wow, this is amazing that somebody is out there actually planning on how they can become better. And maybe you listening out there need to spend more time doing what Mac is talking about. And maybe, Mac, you need to spend less time doing this. So you're young, you got time to figure this out. Choose an amount of time that is maybe slightly less than what you estimate you're currently doing, and see how that works for you. Or if you think you're way overboard with it, choose an amount of time that's way less. And I like to keep something like this on a specific day. So if I do this on Sundays and it's Monday and I have a thought, great, I just let it go. Or maybe quickly write it down and put it to the side. Right? On that day, during that time, is when I spend my time doing this, planning for this. And this really opens me up in a very powerful way to fully experience the rest of life and not be dragged back into that same kind of realm of thinking about what's going to happen someday. So put a time limit on it and keep doing it. Don't stop doing that stuff because it's great. I've got a question here from, I believe that this is Monica. Many times I feel guilty about meditating because I feel unproductive and like I'm taking time away from family, work, etc. Is this unusual? It's not unusual, but it's also BS. And this is what everybody does because this is, again, the ego's insertion of itself, like you gotta get up and do something productive, right? So recognize that for what it is. This is just your ego trying to make an excuse for you not to meditate. And if you recognize what meditation truly is, it is an opportunity for us to practice and get better at being fully present. And of course, it would be possible for you to meditate too much. If you have a family and you love your family and you want to spend time with them, you should do that. But let's be totally honest, if you've got, 10, 20 minutes to spare, which is way less than the amount of time that everyone actually has in their life to meditate, you can meditate. And then when you get out of that meditation, now you are more present. You're going to be there for your family. You're going to be better at work. You're going to be better at everything that you do. Meditation is like lifting weights with your mind and your presence. It is also about being totally in the present. So it does not have to just be about being better for the future. It's about being perfectly present here and now. But when you practice doing that in meditation, and when you are able to achieve it in meditation, now everything else that you do is better. And your family will appreciate it, I promise you. If you have two versions of yourself, there's the version of yourself that doesn't meditate, and there's the version of yourself that meditates 10, 20, 30 minutes consistently. This version is always going to be 10 times better than this other version, 100 or 1,000 times better than the other version. Don't let this sad version of yourself say, we don't have time to meditate, life is too hard. That's all ego, so let that go. All right, I know I've got one from Vanessa. Let's hear it.
Sir, I have a question about, I try to live in the present moment, but there's a decision I have to make, and there's a certain time frame I have to make it in. How do I make a decision about something in the future that has big consequences, but I don't know what decision to make, I guess is the best way to put it.
Got it. So you don't want to give us the specifics of this question. Okay. So let's say that you are in a situation where you've got a big important decision to make, right? You're going to buy a house, and you don't know where the market's going to be. Maybe the market is going to keep going up, or maybe it's about to tank. That's what I think is going to happen. But you're like, is this the right time to do it? Should I do it at all? I have no idea. And you allow you allow that small part of your mind to really be in charge of the whole experience of this. And when I say you, I mean us as human beings. This is what happens when we have something that we're worrying about. When we have something that we are really kind of like thinking about all the ways that it could go wrong, and we're really connecting to the fear aspect of it, then that is the small self, that's the ego self. It's not to say that you should ignore fear. It's not to say that you should ignore the possible negative consequences of this decision that you're making. It is to say that if you allow yourself to be enveloped by and driven by those fears and the possible negative consequences, you will find yourself spiraling down and totally unable to make any kind of good decision ever. So what do? Big surprise. Meditation is going to be super helpful for this, because when you meditate, it's kind of like a reset. You're allowing that part of your mind to kind of set aside. You're going to transcend that part of you that is dealing with fear, and you're going to really look at it from a more powerful perspective. What can I do in this situation that will cause this to go right? How could I actually step into this making of the decision and then actually living with that decision and make it be the most perfect possible way that it could go? Your ego can't do that. Your ego can maybe, theorize, but mostly just kind of worry about it. But your larger self that is beyond the ego is incredibly powerful and incredibly creative and resilient. And so this is what we want to be able to connect to. So you're going to make the decision whether or not to buy the house. Let's say you buy the house and the market tanks, right? And your house is now worth half of what it was worth. Oh my God, you just ruined your life and everything. Or you're like, well, okay, this is really bad, but let me find the most creative and powerful way to deal with this. So maybe it's like, realizing that there's a way that you could, add value to the house. You could, put an additional dwelling unit in the backyard to earn rent, or whatever it is, right? There's some way that you can make it work financially. Maybe you can take this opportunity to be like, hey, I'm going to choose right now that money does not actually own me and ruin my experience of this. I've got a house and it's freaking sweet. I get to live in this house. It's my house. Wow. So whatever it is that you are choosing in that situation, you want to be able to choose and recognize that you are all powerful in your experience of the situation. Now, when you bring in other people to this conversation, it's like this is a conversation about a relationship or something else that involves other people. They've got to be on board because it can't just be your experience of it. Now you've got other people's experience to deal with. So have that conversation with them from a very powerful way, perspective of, it's not just about what could happen badly if I make this decision. It's about what could happen in the good sense. But also, how can I be totally okay with this decision? And how can we both, if it's somebody else that you're having this conversation with, be totally great in this situation, no matter how badly it goes? And it can be very easy, especially with all the craziness going on in the world today, to be sucked into this downward spiral of thinking about how poorly things could go. Okay, but really, how likely is it that all of those bad things will happen? Not super likely. And even if they are, we are incredibly resilient and powerful. We can deal with, pretty much anything. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You die. The other person dies. Everybody's dead. Okay, well, I talked about that last week. So listen to the talk. Like, this is the worst thing that happens. Everyone's dead. It's not that bad. You're just back to wherever you were before you were born. So sometimes we have to recognize when our mind is kind of going down that path and then just reduce it to the absurd level that it really is, or at least where it's heading to. Let it go. And laugh at yourself. And be ready for the joy and the possibility, the highest possibility that is out there for us. Our meditation practice is about being able to connect with that without pretending that the negative doesn't exist, because it does. But we don't choose to identify with and attach to and connect to all the time the negative, right? Now you might be more like me, and you're always just, got this fluffy unicorns and rainbows view of life and reality. And so I have to take a step back from that sometimes and connect to, the real possibility of how could this go badly? And then okay, I've got my pros and my cons, I weigh them, I make the decision, and as soon as the decision is made, that's it. This is one of the hardest parts of this whole process for people, is to be able to make a decision and then not constantly second guess ourselves. So however you get to the decision is great, and then live fully in that, right? You set yourself on this path and you go. And you might, at some point, days, months, years down the road, recognize that I messed up. I should not have made that decision that way. But at least you are enjoying the path that you are on and fully living it, rather than the whole time like looking over your shoulder and wishing that you had made a different decision, right? I mean, this is like going to Baskin Robbins and you got 31 flavors, and how in the world are you supposed to leave that situation feeling good about, because you take one bite of this ice cream and you're like, that's really good, but is it really the best out of all 31 of these flavors that I could have chosen? Maybe, maybe not, but it's the one that you've got, right? So you could throw it away and buy another one, but that's ridiculous. You just eat it and enjoy it fully. Be with that scoop of ice cream. It is in that moment the best, most perfect scoop of ice cream that you could possibly have. And, if you spend all of your time thinking about which ice cream you could have maybe chosen, then your ice cream melts, and then you just got a soggy cone and your hands are all sticky, and that's what's going to happen in life. So make your decision, stick with it, go in that direction without looking back, without second guessing yourself. And then it will become very clear whether you made, the right decision or the wrong decision. That's kind of the wrong way to look at it. But at some point, it might become very clear, okay, this is the way that it's going, and it's not going as well as I want it to, so now I'm going to turn and go this way. And as long as you are in the present and, living powerfully, you're going to be able to make that decision and live with that without second guessing and looking back always. So we got to learn to be decisive. This is a huge, important part of our practice. Someone's throwing a punch at you and you're like, I could go this way or I could go this way. And if that's the thought that you have, you're getting punched in the face. So I could go either way, I just go. And that's it, all right? Like Miyagi Sensei said in Karate Kid, when Daniel-san is not sure, maybe I'm going to be in the tournament, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm going to practice, maybe I'm not. And Miyagi says, walk on one side of the road, okay. Walk on the other side of the road, okay. Walk in the middle, squish like a grape. You don't want to get squished like a grape. You don't want to get punched in the face. You make a decision and go with it and be as powerful with it as you possibly can. It's all that second guessing and kind of waffling that makes us unable to really deal with it. Okay. So I've got two questions here, and you guys are students that I know I see from time to time. I want you to ask those questions in class. Julie, this is the second time you've asked me this question, so I'm going to do a very quick answer for it. Not too quick. It's going to be perfect. Sifu, can you please address our attachment to things? Exclamation, capital letters, and 2 question marks. I'm trying to declutter my life and finding I have ridiculous attachments to objects that feel unhealthy, but I still struggle purging them. Some of you guys heard me talking about this in class a couple of weeks ago. I went back to help my parents move, and they've got literally a hanger, it is an actual hanger, an airplane hanger filled with stuff from the different houses that they had, and they move here and put their furniture and display, and they've got like all of my stuff and my brother's stuff and all their stuff in the past, and they've got dead family members' furniture in there and boxes of pictures from people who I've never even met in my life. And I was like, look, I'm happy to help you move, but what really needs to happen in this situation is you need to light a match and walk away and just let this be done. And, most of it is not my stuff, but I do have some memories and some attachments to that. And I still recognize that we want to be able to at least do that, right? Because if these things have power over us, that's not working. If things have power over us and we are attached to them, then that thing is now more powerful than we are. And that's a real problem. So, dealing with attachment to things, recognize that they are things, they are impermanent. Whether you put that thing in a hanger or not, it's going to at some point cease to exist. Could be before you die, could be after you die, but it's not going to last forever. Right? Even the whole planet and the sun and all of the universe, I assume someday is going to disappear. So it's silly to be attached to these things because we know that they're impermanent. And maybe it's going to break, maybe it's going to go up in smoke, who knows. So recognize the impermanence of this thing. Appreciate it. Appreciate it fully. Right? You've got this thing, and whatever it is, it's a physical thing, or it's a relationship, it's a person in your life, whatever. Appreciate it fully, and then be able to let it go. So you've heard that. If you truly love something, you got to be able to let it go. Maybe with a thing, you can do that. I love this thing so much that I want somebody else to have it. And I can think about somebody who's going to actually be able to use it and appreciate it more than I can even. And maybe you'll find that with a relationship in your life. I love you so much, there's somebody better for you. And some of you have had to make that decision in a relationship before. If that helps, great, use it. If it doesn't help, forget about it. But we got to recognize where that attachment to things comes from. The attachment of any kind. Any attachment is ego. And the ego desperately holds on to things because we have this sense of, normalcy or a sense of safety, or there's a word that fits better than these things, but I can't think of it. But it's like when we have these things in our life, it's like we feel like, okay, I know what this is, and I can feel safer. I can feel more like I know what's happening. It's all about that kind of recognition of the unknown. Some people hold on to their crappy old car forever because even though it's about to just be run into the ground, it's my car and I know it. I know all those sounds that it makes, and I know how I've got to, turn it 10 degrees more to the right to get it to just go straight, and whatever it is that's going on with it. But just, call 1-877 Cars for Kids and just let that thing go, because somebody will get more use out of it than you will, and you will be freed up. Now, if I were like a preacher, I'd say, send all of your belongings to me. Send all of your money. You don't need that stuff. I'll take care of it. I'm not. I'm a sifu. I've got no use for your garbage. So send it to somebody else. And recognize that in that moment of being able to let something go, you're setting it free, kind of, and you're setting yourself free. If you were holding this thing in your hand, and you were able to ask yourself, what would my highest self do with this? Would it hold on to it, or would it let it go? In many cases, it would let it go. And you might not be in your highest self in that situation, but you still know what your highest self would do. So if you put that in a box and take it to Goodwill, that action is connecting you to your highest self, just like anything else that we do. So try to find somebody who's going to enjoy it more than you. Try to recognize in the moment that is attachment, that is ego doing that. I'm not going to be controlled by the ego. I'm not going to be controlled by the thing or the attachment. I'm not going to give it power over myself. I'm going to take power over this whole situation by letting it go. And that's not to say that you have to completely forego all material possessions and live like a monk. Although if you did, life would be a lot simpler, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have to be worrying about this stuff, and you wouldn't be asking me this question. But if you're a normal person and you're not going to go, live in a monastery and have no things other than your robe and your book of whatever kind it is, then at least take power and be able to recognize where that comes from and decide in that moment, even if you're not really in your highest state of mind, what would that decision be like, and be able to make it. This is like fake it till you make it, basically, in spirituality. You're just going to do the things that you know what you would do, and those actions will connect you in that moment and get you there eventually. So if you're going to sit now in your meditation as you should be sitting, and if your mind starts to go to all of the things that you now have to clear out of your closet, or whatever the, you know, the planning that you feel like you should do in your life so you can someday be as good as Mac or whatever it is. All of those things are great not to do during meditation. You know, write it down now quickly if you have to and set it aside. Or if it comes up during meditation for you, if you need to write it down and set it aside, great. But really, your meditation is your opportunity to be present and create a clearing for you, where it's like a reset. Now, at the end of my meditation, I'm in a better position to make those decisions and take those steps and move powerfully in whatever direction I choose. So sit comfortably.